Today we're going to be looking at Colourpop in the color Raspberry. So my swatches are human hair swatches, but the only one that is going to be virgin hair is going to be number 4, the black swatch. The rest have been chemically colored or bleached or treated at some point in their existence. 1 is green. Usually when I do pinks and purples, I get requests to do green swatches, so we'll see how that looks over there. 2 is gray. 3 is a natural red, once again 4 is black, and then 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a very toned version of number 11. So to start, I will take the color directly from the container and I will apply it to the top of each swatch. And then some people do like to dilute their dye, so I'll do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Unfortunately, my camera stopped filming, so I have no video of me applying the color to the hair swatches. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Plus, different screens and monitors can make colors look different, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you. For the diluted section, we're doing a 4:1 ratio, so that's going to be 1 part of the dye to 4 parts diluter. If you're unsure about what diluter does, the quick answer I usually give is that it's basically something that lightens the color of a semi-permanent dye. Usually each brand will sell their own version of a diluter that will have the same consistency as their dyes. But to keep things fair between each video, I always just use a plain white conditioner to dilute my dye. Alright, now I'm going to let these sit for about 3 hours so they can really absorb the color. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I'll meet you back here and we could do some comparisons. Alright, so I wasn't totally sure what to expect with these because on the Colourpop website, I'm pretty sure these are listed as a tint. And when I hear tint, I hear just minimal color, but they looked like they were more pigmented. So happy to say they are quite pigmented. I would say that number 4 is the only one I do not see a difference on, which makes sense since it is black. I will say that if you have virgin hair, usually virgin hair will not take or hold on to color as easily or as well. So if you have anything darker than a blonde, definitely be precautious, but this does seem to work really, really well for darker hair and does give a nice tint. So number 1 was originally green. On both the top and the bottom, it came out a little bit more on the burgundy side, but not so burgundy that it's red. It's a little bit more on the purple end. I don't know, it's darker than the blonder swatches, and I guess a little bit more cool toned as well. 2 was originally gray. I think it's a little bit harder to tell on the top half of the swatch, but on the diluted section you can see it did come out a little bit more cool toned than it might have on the blonder swatches. And the only other difference I'd say is that it appears a little bit darker as well. 3 was the natural red. I think colors like this over natural red is so pretty. It does usually turn out kind of similar to some of the brown swatches, but I do think the warmth of the hair before dyeing did kind of help to keep a slightly warmer look versus the browner swatches. And one thing I like about colors like this over dark hair is it almost has a slightly natural look. So if you don't want anything too bright, having darker hair first may help with that. But as usual, I always like to say do a strand test just to be safe. Now 5 is the only one I'd say for the browns that still looks more brown than pink. It kind of changes the undertone, gives a little bit more warmth in more natural lighting, but here it still looks pretty much like a dark brown. I can't really see as much pink coming through till number 6. If you're looking for something a little bit more bright, I'd say you'd want to have your hair originally like 10 or 11 because those I'd say are the brightest on both the top and the bottom. While on 7, 8, and 9, it has a slightly more soft look to it, especially on the diluted sections as it gets darker. And then number 12, being the tone swatch, it's always more cool toned than the blonde swatches, but never as cool toned as number 2, so it's a good kind of in between. But I would say the biggest difference is more so on the diluted section. It looks a lot more cool toned than the bottom of number 11. Alright, so now I'd like to look into comparisons. The first comparison I wanted to look at today is Lunar Tides in the color Fuchsia. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, And number 9. I kind of feel like in the less direct lighting, they look a little bit more similar, but in the direct lighting, you can definitely tell that the Lunar Tides leans much more cool toned. And because it leans a little bit more cool toned, I think it makes the direct dye portion look a little bit darker as well. I actually think the diluted sections look a little bit more similar. Not like they are similar, but compared to the top half, the bottom for the Colourpop, it starts to look a little bit more cool toned compared to the top. And you can see next to the Lunar Tides Fuchsia, it also is quite cool toned, so I just think they look a little bit more similar. Clearly, Colourpop is a lot more warm compared to Lunar Tides, which is definitely much more cool. The other comparison I have for today is directions in the color Cerise, I think is how you say it. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. Alright, so if you're worried about the Colourpop being too bright, hopefully you can see next to the directions that, especially on the diluted section, Colourpop isn't as bright as it can be. On the direct dye portion, the Cerise looks a little bit darker, but on the diluted section, it looks super bright, like close to a neon. And I almost wonder if I diluted it even more, just how bright it could get. Whereas in comparison, the Colourpop just has a slightly more soft look to it. It's obviously not super smoky or anything like that. And if you want pink hair, you definitely have a lot of options. Alright, so now I'd like to look at the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything after this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting. And because I am using natural lighting, that means I have to film on different days, which means the lighting environment can change. So if the before and after clips look different from each other, that is why. I hope this video helps. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out, but just remember I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.